Okay, my outstanding friends, we are getting closer and closer and closer to creating a new educational system, literally a new educational system. And it's going to need new books, it's going to need new teachers, it's going to need a whole new way of thinking and interacting. And I have a friend who is writing my books right now, and this was from a book I wrote here on, and it's on Amazon. It's only 99 cents. It's just so that I could get it out to people so that they could understand it. But it's on you know, it's text only, I guess. I don't even know, to be honest with you, but it doesn't come in a book. Now, he's doing the books. This I put out in 2016, and this book here that he did, Velikovsky, he puts my name on it, but it's my papers, and he is writing my research in his books. So I have nothing to do with these books. Completely, I don't profit from them. I don't do anything. I don't say yes or no to anything. I just say, please use my research. And he did electron flood theory and particle theory and giants in history, and this is a draining of the Atlantis and the Sahara. And I could be wrong about this, but who knows? This goes back to 2015. And again, a lot of this stuff, this is mud fossils and geology and introduction to the mud fossil way of thinking. And he's got a bunch of other ones too that he did, you know, mud fossil world, and he's done, and they're nice, and they're not expensive at all. I don't think they're, I'm not going to say how much they are, but they're not much at all. And it's Paul Amatucci, and you know, you could get them, and they're nice. You can just throw it on a counter table, on a coffee table, maybe somebody will look at it or whatever. But I do the videos, but at some point we have to start a new school, literally. And I'm going to show you something that was done in 1972 that relates to Velikovsky. And this is the book I wrote, Mud Fossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. He wrote Worlds in Collision, and he was destroyed by academia, absolutely destroyed. A very good friend of Einstein's. He was no fool, but he did the research that indicated that we were almost hit by Venus because of a birth of Venus from the feared god Jupiter. That freaked them out. They went right off the rails, and they attacked him. They said, how could a planet give birth? That's insanity. The guy's crazy. He should be locked up. Don't listen to him. Well, guess what? His book was a bestseller for 11 weeks in a row. A bestseller, #1. And they forced him to take it off the bookshelves. The publisher was so intimidated by academia that they said, all right, we'll stop publishing it. #1 for 11 weeks in a row. And I have found all the evidence supports everything he said, and everything that he said since 1950. They tried to discount, and every time they did, they found out he was right. The temperature on Venus is hot enough to melt lead. It's so hot, it's still today. And it almost hit us, and it literally boiled our oceans and everything. It made the Earth stand still. All that stuff is recorded in history, and and everybody thought it was insane, and I do too. It sounds crazy, but the mud fossils proves. And then all of the silica oceans and all of this stuff has now completely validated what Velikovsky said in material ways, not just theory. So anyway, everything has to change. And let me show you a clip from 1972 where they were interviewing this guy about Velikovsky's work and how everything that he had said supported what his original claim was, and everything since then, the experience, it was 22 years between the book in 1950 and 1972, and it's everything had piled up in Velikovsky's favor because it was all true. And she's asking him, well, what if he was right? And here's what happened. And somebody else did the same thing with my work to artificial intelligence, and I'll tell you the story about that in a second. Okay, I'm just going to read this and make comments here and there about the controversial theories of Immanuel Velikovsky. Now, in 1950, Immanuel Velikovsky was a psychiatrist who was also a very skilled scholar, authored a controversial book. Velikovsky was extremely knowledgeable in texts of ancient peoples. He went through all the cultures, to all their museums, their cultural centers, their carvings, their ancient texts and papyruses and tablets and everything. He based on his interpretation of these texts, Velikovsky reached the conclusion our solar system with its 9 planets was not always the same as we see it today. The book Worlds in Collision asserted around 3,500 years ago, that's like about 1500 BC, somewhere around there, the planet Venus was somehow ejected from the planet Jupiter as a comet. But it's the same size as Earth. They call it a comet. The comet Venus then started wandering through the solar system. Its gravitational field pushed other planets out of their orbits or changed their rotation, which is Earth and Mars primarily. Now, Velikovsky attributed many of the disasters recorded in ancient times, which the Earth stood still and all these kind of things, the parting of the seas, the global flood, all of that. He has attributed these strange interactions that from the Earth had with Venus. The material that fell from Venus' comet tail into Earth's atmosphere caused plagues visited upon Egypt as recorded in the Bible. The plague is throughout the land. Blood is everywhere. It rained blood, literally, cried the Egyptian impure. Men shrink from tasting human beings' thirst after water. According to Velikovsky, thinking a fine, rusty, ferruginous with iron dust from the comet's tail filtered down on the globe, turning everything red. I mean, all these things were written about in all of these different cultures. It wasn't just one here and there. As Earth went deeper into the comet's tail, the dust turned to small stones and a hail of gravel pelted the Earth. There was hail and fire mingled in with hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation, the Bible reads. Now, which is the tail of the comet, which is all the stones fell. Velikovsky all credits the manna that nourished the nation of Israel during the 40 years wandering through the desert as carbohydrates that fell to Earth from the comet's Venus's tail. And I understand that too, because Venus was literally a birth from Jupiter. We're going to discuss this in a little more detail later. As Venus grew closer, the gravity of the planet caused Earth to rock on its axis and stop and start its rotation. It literally stood still. And at that time, all of the internal ocean waters inside welled up all over the Earth. And now they have found a deep silicate layer, which accounts for all the silicon and all the quartz and sand and everything on the Earth, is that silicon came to the surface, which is normally way down in the bottom. And they admit this. They say it was an unnatural event, silicon-rich. Well, here it is right here. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures by silica-rich oceans. This is Yale. So that's not something I'm making up. Now listen to this now. As Venus grew closer, the gravity of the planet caused everything to shake and the axis and all this. Earth broke out in waves, engulf all the mountains and ranges. Now, Velikovsky speculates that this may be when the legendary city of Atlantis sunk beneath the waves. And that I have written about as well, and I do also believe that's exactly what happened. And I show that because there was also a great battle on Earth between Typhon and the gods at this particular time. I know it sounds crazy, but I have the evidence to support my statements. I have the evidence to support my statements about what I'm talking about, giants and the myth and the history and religions and all that stuff. So let's get a little deeper into this. All right, we know now that as Venus approached Earth, it just caused chaos on Earth. The way it spun, the way it stopped, the way all the waters sloshed all over the Earth. And this is all written about in the ancient past. Now, so he speculates that the legendary city of Atlantis sunk beneath the waves, and I agree with that. Now, the changes in rotation, according to Velikovsky, caused a prolonged darkness over the Earth. His research discovered in Iran, scholars recorded a night lasting 3 days, one night, followed by a day lasting 3 days. So the Earth literally slowed down to just barely moving, and then eventually it spun back up again. And it will do that because it's spinning and scrubbing through other particles, and that's going to make it spin back up to its original speed. But when Venus almost hit us, impacting with our atmosphere, it pushed the Earth from spinning this way, it pushed it back, so it sort of stuck. And it took 3 days to get out of the light phase and 3 days to get in the darkness phase, that type of thing. Now, the Bible speaks of a day when the sun stood still to allow Joshua to finish a battle. Now, these kind of things I don't know about, but the Chinese recorded the same phenomena. Everybody had it all over the world. Now, according to Velikovsky's work, somewhere in the 8th century BC, Venus comet pushed Mars out of its proper orbit into a close encounter with Earth. Again, I don't know about that. This caused earthquakes to shake the world. Both the poles shook, wrote one observer at 747 BC. He said both the poles shook of the Earth. And Atlas, who, according to legend, carried the Earth on his back, shifted the burden of the sky. The sun vanished. The rising clouds obscured the heavens, the year shortened, and ancient astronomers were forced to develop a new calendar because things changed. Now, finally, after many years of causing catastrophes on Earth, Venus and Mars settled into their current circular orbits. They're sort of stable now. Now, Velikovsky's theories didn't fit in at all with modern astrophysics. He was criticized by most scientists, literally everyone. They saw him as just another crackpot theory. They had quite a bit of evidence to refute it. All right, so they say they had all kinds of evidence to refute Velikovsky, which is not true. A few scientists weren't satisfied to duke it all with Velikovsky in this marketplace of ideas, though. They made the blunder of putting pressure on Velikovsky's publisher not to publish. They refused to let them publish Worlds in Collision as part of the company's textbook series. They wouldn't allow it. When this became known, public sympathy shifted toward Velikovsky, increasing his popularity. He was a persuasive author, and many began to believe in his theories. Isaac Asimov, a Velikovsky critic and not a bad wordsmanship himself, once wrote, "He is an interesting writer. It's fun to read his books. I have read every book he has published and hope to read any he writes in the future. Although he doesn't lure me into accepting his views, I can well see where those less knowledgeable in fields Velikovsky deals with would succumb." All right, sorry about that interruption. I was finishing up right here where it says, Asimov read every book he published and hoped to read more in the future, although he doesn't lure in to accepting Velikovsky's ideas. I can well see where those less knowledgeable in the fields Velikovsky deals with would succumb. In other words, he's treating him like an idiot. Asimov was not the smart one, Velikovsky was. So what makes scientists doubt Velikovsky's views? They have a long list of reasons why such a scenario was not possible. So they say it's just impossible. A few of the more important ones are the temperature of Venus. Actually, both sides in this controversy point to this as evidence for their claims. Velikovsky claims it was over 800 degrees or so, and it is. Now, when Velikovsky first published his ideas, the temperature on the surface of Venus was not known. And anyway, As Frank Drake of the National Radio Astronomy Observatory wrote, we would have expected a temperature of only slightly greater than that of Earth. Velikovsky, though, predicted Venus, after its close encounter with Earth, Mars, and the Sun, would have a much higher temperature, expecting, indeed, it was discovered the surface temperature was 750 degrees Kelvin, hot enough to melt lead. So that's how hot Venus is. And when it impacted with our atmosphere, it literally cooked the Earth. It's hot enough to melt lead. Carl Sagan, who was not nice whatsoever to Velikovsky, was one of Velikovsky's most ardent critics, and he was nasty. He argued that if Velikovsky had been ejected if Venus had been ejected out of Jupiter, it required amount of energy would have heated Venus so much the planet comet would have vaporized. How does he know that? Where does he come up with that stuff? And even if somehow the planet had managed to survive the ejection of the temperature, even thousands of years later, claimed Sagan, would have been much greater than those found today. Well, Sagan also argued that Venus had been on an extremely eccentric orbit, as Velikovsky suggested. It would be highly unlikely that it could have changed its orbit so radically. Highly unlikely. Well, no, that just can't happen. And he just went on and on. He savaged him. And he savaged him on his show on TV, Cosmos. Now, Velikovsky didn't seem to be concerned with the problems his theory generated for physicists. He himself said, the ancient traditions are our best guide to the appearance and arrangement of the earliest remembered solar system, not some fancy computer retro calculations based upon current understanding of astronomical physics. Because current has nothing to do with the past. Things are different now than they were in the past. It's as simple as that. And Velikovsky was right. However, other scientific disciplines don't seem to bear out Velikovsky's ideas either. Geologists who have cored into the world's ice packs and ocean bottoms have not found signs of deposit Venus made upon Earth as the Earth passed through the planet's comet tail. In fact, Venus is much too massive with too strong a gravity to ever have had a visible tail, as Velikovsky claims. That's just not true. When it was ejected from Jupiter, it was literally a birth of a planet. And it came along with all the same things that a birth has, which means blood, an umbilical cord, which was the stones, and a placenta, which made the manna. And it all fell on Earth. And you know, the manna cooked into cookies or whatever they made, little flakes. Now, and they're talking about geology. Nobody understands geology. They don't understand, have no idea what geology is even like. The Earth is made out of literally bodies of creatures. Now, Venusian geology doesn't seem to support a young Venus either. Radar studies of the planet's surface show a landscape saturated with craters. Overlapping edges of these craters show they impact craters instead of volcanic. It was an impact because it almost hit the Earth. The high number of them shows that the Venusian surface is very old. No, it's not. It's only 3,500 years old. And that's when it was ejected from Jupiter. The whole world had the same story. Even in the realm of anthropology, there seems to be problems with the Velikovsky theories. According to Worlds in Collision, Velikovsky did not exist. Venus did not exist before 1500 BC. It was born then. In his book, Velikovsky says that neither the Hindus or the Babylonians recorded the planet Venus. No, they didn't. However, Peter Huber from Technique, reports that in cuneiform texts stretching as far back as 3000 BC, Venus is mentioned as the star connected with the rising and setting sun. Well, maybe that's true, I don't know. Clear evidence that it occupied an orbit in between the Earth and the sun as it does today. Again, I can't confirm that whatsoever. Everybody was trying to go against Velikovsky, coming up with all these off-the-wall little things. Velikovsky did a very organized study of all the cultures, and they had the same thing. Venus was ejected from the feared god Jupiter. That's exactly how they recorded it. The comet Venus was born from the feared god Jupiter. And Jupiter was the god of the solar system. And they could morph and change. These are things they have no clue about. In the colleges now and the universities, they treat you like an idiot for saying this. And they're still treating Velikovsky like an idiot. So are Velikovsky ideas that events in the solar system might affect life on Earth worthless? No, not at all. Well, Velikovsky is apparently wrong about a Venus that wanders through the solar system in historical times. He may have, in some small way, stimulated scientific thinking on the stability of the solar system. Isaac Asimov, who referred to Velikovsky theories as a type of exoheresy, wrote, for one thing, Velikovskianism, and indeed an exoherical view that becomes prominent enough to force itself on science. Forced itself on science. It forced itself on science. Science couldn't do anything about it. It had to come in and force itself. Just like me, I have to do the same thing. Acts to puncture scientific complacency, and that is good, because scientific people are complacent. They say, it's all settled. We know everything about everything. No, they don't. And they won't listen. That's the problem. And exoheresy may cause scientists to bestir themselves for the purpose of re-examining the basis of their beliefs. Yes, it's time to do that, academics, even if only to gather firm and logical reasons for the rejection of this nonsense that is too good too. An exoheresy may cause scientific activity which in a serendipitous fashion may uncover something worthwhile that has nothing to do with the exoheresy, and that is very good if it happens. In other words, the guy's an idiot and he's saying idiot things, but it's making us respond to the idiot, and we may uncover some little thing that we hadn't even thought about. So it's a good thing that we have an idiot like Asimov and an idiot like Roger Spur to come out and force against their super intelligent academia. And I say no. They are the ones that are the idiots. And they have proven themselves to be idiots and incompetent. So I am the one that's doing the exoheresy now. And I wish Velikovsky was here right now. I would shake his hand. All right, when Velikovsky first wrote Worlds in Collision, many scientists rejected it not only because of the reasoned arguments, but because the idea that the solar system could change or the events in space could have a profound effect on life on Earth was unsettling. Yeah, they were scared. They were saying, no, don't talk about that. Since that time, scientists have accepted that asteroid impacts have led to massive extinctions on Earth. Just ask the dinosaurs. No, the dinosaurs died during the flood. The dinosaurs were literally almost like insects on the Earth at this time. The creatures that were on Earth, the dinosaurs, they'd go like that and the dinosaur would be gone. They were like ticks. Even the orbits of the planets no longer seem set in stone. In an article in September 1999, edition of Scientific American, somebody made a case that the planets Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune may have expanded their orbits since the beginning of the solar system, while Jupiter's orbit has shrunk. He also argues that interactions between Neptune and the planet Pluto have caused the smaller planet to shift from a near circular orbit. How does he know that? How do they know these things? Who gave them that knowledge? How could they possibly come up with these conclusions and say, well, since then we understand because now we know? No, you don't. Now you guess something else. Will we one day find evidence of events in the solar system that might explain what Velikovsky observed? Yes, and I have. Absolutely, 100%. And I challenge anybody in academia to discuss this with me. So yes, I have verified what Velikovsky's claims were in the ancient texts. Perhaps so. No, not perhaps so. Absolutely, certainly so. But if we are to take any explanation seriously, we must bring forth the full weight of several scientific disciplines, which I have done anthropology, physics, geology, biology, astrophysics, light. I have done all of those things to bear the problem and get the results to agree. Well, you have to be able to talk and discuss to agree or disagree. But being put and shoved away like I have been, there is no agreement can be had because these people have destroyed everything I've done and not allowed me to be in this controversial theory about Velikovsky. They can't hide forever. It's done. It's a done deal. So they just keep looking worse and worse for themselves. And this is where you should be. These are, they're not expensive. And Paul Amatucci put these out. Again, I have nothing to do with them, but these relate to my research, and they're nice. You can, nice place where you write little notes and stuff, and they're very simple. They're my simple little papers that he sort of embellished. But he's got them on all of my work. He's got, I don't know, 7 or 8 or 9 of them or something like that. And electron flood theory and ether particle theory, the stuff that's in space, and all of this stuff. It's got to change, everything. We need a new library of all the books. They're all wrong. They're all wrong about this stuff. They're wrong about virtually everything. And now I'm standing up just like Velikovsky did. I'm saying, come on. If Isaac Asimov was here now, I'd say to him, okay, now that you say you want to look into things, look into things. All right? And they refuse to look into it because it really destroys everything they said. And it shows that what they have said is just not right. Now, unfortunately for them, I agree. It's going to be very invasive to their status and to their authority. But reality is more important to me than somebody's authority to say, no, you have to believe this or we will ruin your life, even though we know it's not true. This is what really upsets me. Okay, this is fabulous. This is from SMU Jones film collection, all right? And it's copyrighted, and it may be used for research and educational purposes only. And that's exactly what this is. This is about as educational as you're ever going to get. And it's all based on Velikovsky's truth and how he tried to educate people, and they wouldn't allow it. So here's what's happened. Here's what he's going to say. All right, and again, here, Venus was extremely hot, much hotter than anyone expected. Here goes.
Velikovsky had anticipated.
What will happen if Velikovsky is given credit for some of these predictions that have been proved? What effect might all of this have?
If people start investigating his works open-mindedly, and hence they will start realizing that there is considerable logic behind what he says, this eventually will require new textbooks in astronomy, history, geology, archaeology, and all related fields.
Yeah, 100% of everything. That's why we have to start anew. Literally start anew. And it is what it is. Now we can have that discussion that we should have been having all along, because the evidence is just overwhelming. So this guy says we need new textbooks, we need new this, we need new everything in every single field, and especially electron flood theory, because this is what the basis of everything that they've been trying to figure out in these giant colliders is all about. And I can show the evidence for this. Now, again, these books are not mine. I didn't do this, but this is based on a paper I wrote in 2019. Now, all of the things that I have presented a lot of it's changed. A little bit tweak here, tweak there, but my basic principles are pretty solid. What I have presented, I have material evidence to support. Even the light theory, all the mud fossils, the whole 9 yards. Everything I have to support, it supports Velikovsky. All right, so this is about as educational as it gets. Now, what happened with me is somebody put in my work about what if giants were 200 feet tall, which is just a puppy, really. That's a tiny giant. What if light could speed up and slow down? What if, and they put in a lot of my research. It said, AI came back and said, every single thing that we have learned would have to be changed. Our history, our religions, our everything, because it's all of this stuff completely changes everything. All right, so I'm just setting you up for what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do a big, long one about Velikovsky, because he just got destroyed. He had a whole batch of books, and they just keep crushing him. And today, even today, they still consider him what they call a pseudoscientist. He just made up a bunch of things so he could get books sold. No, absolutely not. He went back and went through all the cultures in the world and got their true history in that culture and what they said, and it all fit together with what everybody else was saying. Every one of them talked about dragons, they talked about gods, they talked about giants, they talked about a great flood, catastrophes, changes in the heavens, the earth being covered with red blood. All of that stuff in Egypt and all those tragedies that happened are all fully understood if you understand that Venus did come from a literal birth. And I'm going to show you where it came from. It came from a vagina. And if you don't want to see vaginas, don't watch. All right, like I said, this is going to get a little graphic, but the reason I have to show you this is because Velikovsky's claim, which he was destroyed for saying, was that Jupiter literally gave birth to Venus. Now, what was written in the ancient text was the feared god, Jupiter, who is the planet Jupiter. The feared god, Jupiter, gave birth to the fiery comet, which turned out to be Venus. And that is exactly what Velikovsky recorded. That's what all the people throughout the world recorded. And it came towards Earth, is hotter than the sun, and boiled all the waters on the Earth, basically. I don't know how deep into the oceans or not. But when it did, it impacted our atmosphere. It's hotter than, you can melt lead just in the atmosphere on Venus. Even today, it's that hot. And it hit our atmosphere and just destroyed the whole Earth. Created a huge, enormous flood. Velikovsky said that's what caused the Earth to stand still. And I fully understand it with electron flood theory. Everything makes sense. Exactly what he's saying makes sense. But who could ever say a planet could give birth? You'd have to be insane to say that. Well, no, because the evidence is there now. And the evidence showed up. By the time he was dead, literally everything that he said had been shown. Now, he wrote these books, and it's in an archive now, and I can give you the address to the archive. They have a audio one, and all of these books are available. And the archives being maintained by a team of historians to ensure the integrity and preservation of Immanuel Velikovsky's unpublished writings. A lot of it they wouldn't publish. It's strictly nonprofit. Its sole purpose is the advancement of education and scholarship. This is important for us to understand what the history that he collected was denied to be able to be shown. Literally, they made him take his book off the shelves. Now, he's saying, Days and Years, an autobiography giving an account of Velikovsky's life from the earliest years until 1958. And by that time, they had destroyed him so much, he was just a joke. Now, Before the Day Breaks, the story of Velikovsky's discussion with Einstein on the role of electromagnetism in the universe. He understood this too, because I'm going to tell you right now, Einstein wasn't right about what he said. And my stuff, I can show you, is correct. I have the evidence to show, because now Einstein didn't have all the lasers and all the things that we have now. So anyway, another thing he did in the beginning, the story of the catastrophes preceded those described in Worlds in Collision. That's the one that talks about Venus almost hitting Earth, and it actually did impact with Mars and destroyed it. And he's got the Dark Ages of Greece, critical examination of the mysterious gap of close to 5 centuries. All right, 5 centuries they've sort of lost that information. The Dark Age of Greece. Now, the Assyrian conquest, the volume of the Ages in Chaos. What happened after this disaster? There was ages were in chaos, covering the period from the end of this period to the time of Ramses II. Now, again, he was very, very detailed in his collection of this information. This was not just a little chunk here and a chunk there. He went to literally every culture on earth, and they all had a similar story. Some of it was a little different, and there would be differences in different places on earth too. But they did say that the earth literally almost stopped rotating. It's just, normally it's going like this. And one day Venus came and banged this way, and it went, and it just kept, and they were just fighting each other, and eventually it got by. But they say it could have taken a couple of days. The sun didn't set for a couple of days, and then it had a couple of nights, because it still wasn't spinning fast enough. And sooner or later it started to rev up back again. And it would do that because of the way it moves through the particles in the universe, and that is also explained in electron flood theory. So Velikovsky's my guy, and he's my hero, and he stood up and they crushed him. Well, that's happening to me too, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing just like he did. Now, so you got the Assyrian conquest, you got collection of essays, all right, comprising articles, fragmentary manuscripts from everywhere. He collected everything. These are the physical papers from the years between 2 world wars, when Velikovsky was a practicing psychoanalyst. He did a lot of stuff. He was all over the whole spectrum. He was fully, and I think he started the Hebrew University of Jerusalem or something like that. But anyway, all of this is in Velikovsky's, let me see right here. All right, this is from his archives. Hold on, this should come up in a second, I hope. Or not. Oh, there it is. Now, this is the Immanuel Velikovsky archive, Worlds in Collision, and this is audio. All right, and it comes down to Venus and then all these different chapters. This is very long. Part 2, Mars. This is where Mars was literally impacted by Venus. And this is Worlds in Collision. And then he's got, this archive has all kinds of stuff. He's got virtually all his works. Otherwise, he's lost in history. When I first started and I published my book about minds in collision, minds in collision, nobody even knew who he was. I'm not kidding you. I'm talking about people that are in the fields of his work. Nobody even knew who he was, and the ones that did know who he was, oh, that guy, what an idiot he was. Oh, he was a nutcase. Carl Sagan showed he was a fool. Well, I can tell you what, Carl Sagan was on the other side of the equation here, my friends. It wasn't Velikovsky that was the fool. Okay, my friends, as I said, this is going to get a little graphic. It's not porn, it's just what it is. Now, this is Jupiter. And the statements were in the ancient text that the feared god Jupiter gave birth to the fiery comet Venus. This is the red spot on Jupiter. It's called a storm. Well, it's not a storm. It is a mound. And it's called Venus Mons. All right, and it's a mound. And this planet is spinning in this direction. All right, with all its atmosphere surrounding it, moving around and around. Now, this bump has to pass through that atmosphere. It's scrubbing through the atmosphere that's sliding past it, just the way our planet does. The weather patterns move because the planet has to move through them. And the same thing is going on here. Well, what happens is that mound is pushing through this band of dense clouds. This is very dense atmosphere, huge planet, very, very dense. Now, when it hits this mound, it has to swirl around it. So that's what the swirl is. It's not a storm, it's a mound. So as it hits it, you can see it. You see it hitting here, and it has to come up around. When it does, it has to make those little vortices. It's absolutely hard not to understand that. So, because this is a mound, and as it plows through all of that oncoming stream of particles, and they're pretty well organized, it hits here and it just makes it spin. All right? Case number one. Number two, let's see what the Venus mons actually looks like. Now, here's where it starts to get graphic. Now, this is the Great Red Spot. And as you can see, it's shaped like this and pretty much like a vagina. Now, this is the vaginal canal. All right? This is the clitoris. This whole region is the vagina, and around here it even has the spots where the hair would be. Look at this. You see this? I'm going to show you what a regular one is, and it's going to be a very graphic picture, but this is all around the edge, just like it should be. And this is the clitoris area, which is a sort of a floppy sort of tissue. And it's being swirled this way because it is sort of a swirly situation going on here. I'm not saying it doesn't look like a storm, but it's the stuff has to spin around it, or spin around it this way, whatever. What we're looking at here is a vagina. Now, here's how I can absolutely certainly prove it. This right here, at the very bottom, you see that spot right there? You see this strap coming over? And that spot, remember that. That is literally the tag that holds the vagina in place in the body. I'm not kidding you. Wait, I'm going to show you this anatomically. All right, so if you see anything anatomically that does not look correct, I'd like to know why. All right, so let's look at the anatomical one. And again, it's going to be graphic, but here it comes. All right, this is literally called the Venus mons. This is the bump around a vagina. And that's it, and they all have them. Now, remember I told about the floppy sort of stuff, the clitoris here, that's that tissue that was right up at the top. All right. Below is obviously the vaginal canal, the opening. Around here is exactly what it looks like, that same hairline. Now, remember I said pay close attention to that one little spot? You see right below? That's it right there. I mean, it is exactly identical because it is the same thing. There's a strap with a tab that holds the placement of the vagina so it doesn't slide around here. I'm not kidding you. Every part in your body is tagged together with what I'm going to call a spur lock now, because nobody has ever seen it before or understands it. They just consider it interstitium. That is not interstitium. That is a specific type of tissue. I'm almost absolutely certain, because it is in all the other organs in the body where they're tagged in. I call it a spur lock. And it is a different type of tissue, and it's, when I started studying this carefully, wherever these body parts, well, hold on, let me show you one thing. All right, I'm going to show you something that's kind of scary. This was I believe this was 1978. They went up to prove Velikovsky was wrong and found out this is what the Great Red Spot looks like. But they just dismissed it as a storm. Well, as you can see, that is not a storm. So what happens? This is what it looked like then. Well, what does it look like now? Watch this. This is what it looks like just recently in 2019. All the blood started to slough off. It started turning very round. You see this? This is only within a matter of a week or so. Blood started sloughing off here. Big slabs of red stuff, they said, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And what their conclusion was, this may be falling apart. The storm may have finally died out. Well, no. It appears to me that it's getting ready to give birth again. There is no saying that it can't. It did once. That is, I'm almost 100% certain that this, which is now this, gave birth to Venus. And Venus is this. All right, you see this? All that is just like welding arc. You talk to anybody that does welding, and this was so highly charged when it hit Mars and Earth. I think this happened when it hit Mars, because it actually hit Mars. Here's the Mars impact, and here's the Mars where is it? Here it is, right here. This is the Marianas Trench or crater. It runs the whole. This is wider than the United States, and it's very deep. And it was an impact of that Venus into Mars, which destroyed Mars, killed it. It was just like Earth before. As far as I can determine, there was just the exact same kind of life there as there was here, and it was also gigantic life. And now we could be experiencing the same sort of thing happen here again. I don't know. There's no saying it can't. And here's what, as I showed you, the body parts all tagged in. And here's that tag, just to show you. Anywhere one organ or body and part invests into another, you're going to have that spurlock. There it is, exactly right there. And here's what it looks like on a piece of meat, which is a stone now. Here it is right here. You see it? That flap right there? That comes down and it latches in this whole section into the next body part. So your shoulder attaches to your, your neck and that type of thing. Otherwise, you just fall apart. That's what these things do. And they're latches, and they are tough as hell. They're much tougher than the fascia. You see the little stripes in them and stuff? These here are a whole different type of material. And I could show that because of some of my other mud fossils, which is one of these little tiny lungs. And you see that? There's the same latch. That's that same latch right there. And it has nothing to do with what the rest of the lung is. This is a lung from some small creature. And that latch is this latch here. It's a whole new body part they never knew about. And the same thing at the vagina there, that tag is the same sort of thing. And I discovered that in the ancient texts, well, in the acupuncture, I don't know if they're ancient or not, but I imagine they are, the acupuncture points on the body are very close to where these investments are. And they may stimulate them electrically or something, I don't know. And there's also two little tabs that come out of here that provide the fluid from this layer into the next layer, because it's one worldwide, well, one complete system of the person. It has to have, they call it a fluid-filled highway through the whole body. So if you can't make this fluid go to the next body fluid, chunk, you're going to have problems. And that could be a source of pains too, because I guess acupuncture might help with pain. I don't know. I go all over the place when I start doing my research, because you have to. And this is the thing right here. This is the dragon that's in the desert that is all written. It's called Typhon. You just look it up, Apollodorus. Read Apollodorus 1.6.2 and .3. And it talks about Typhon, and it talks about him attacking the gods. He was so big, he covers all of North Africa. He tried to attack the gods to kill them, and they turned themselves into animals to run away and hide. He was so big he could kill the gods. Earth gave birth to him to go and kill the gods. And here he is, unmarked. But there's his body. This is all runoff. And you come up on Google Earth, he's in North Africa trying to kill a fish. And here he is in its entirety. Right? He runs all the way across North Africa, all the way across. And they said he has the thighs of a human, and the rest he was a dragon. He had a red flared eye, which he does. And he was attacking this particular fish that he was spitting fire at. And they said, this is all written. It says they changed themselves into animals to try to get away from him. And he was so tall when he stood up that his head would brush the stars. And that's a good possibility. I think it's like 3 times higher than the space station is where, if he's just stood up. It's just enormous. It's 1,100 miles long. So all of these things that they had written about, as far as I'm concerned, I've confirmed them with my research, and Velikovsky's accounts of what was written, they all add up. And then when you start reading Apollodorus, which is all about the formation of everything, right from Gaia when she gave birth to these crazy monsters, and then she got really upset and gave birth to Typhon to go and kill the gods who were killing her monstrous kids. It's just unbelievable when you read it. I mean, it's just crazy. So I understand why people think it's nuts. But when you see dragons and you see a giant fish being attacked and you see the birth of a planet from a literal vagina, and everything that they said exactly, identically stacks up. The Mars being destroyed by the impact of Venus, electrically, basically, as far as I can see, discharged into Mars and just destroyed it, blew its atmosphere off, toasted the whole thing. That's why it's now the red planet. Okay, there was some extreme scholars long ago, and one of them was Hesiod. Then there was Apollodorus, who compiled all kinds of stuff from Hesiod and all of the earliest writers. Hesiod basically was the first that was writing. And then Ovid eventually compiled everything together at about the time of Christ. But about 150 BC or so, Apollodorus wrote all this, which was compiled from all of the things carried down and fully understood. And this is about the gods and Zeus and killing all of the giants. And then the earth was enraged. Here's what happened. Zeus, here it was, the Fates fighting with brazier clubs killed Argus and Thoas, and the other giants Zeus smote and destroyed with thunderbolts. They called it his great and mighty sword. All of them Hercules shot with arrows as they were dying. So they were a team of killers. And Zeus was supposed to be the god of this system. And I don't know, this is going to get very deep. Now, when the gods, all right, so gods were Zeus and his crew, had overcome the giants, they killed them all. Earth, those were Earth's children. The giants were Earth's children. Earth was, as a living creature, became enraged and had intercourse with Tartarus to bring forth Typhon to kill the gods. He was a hybrid man and beast. In size and strength, he surpassed everything on earth. His thighs were the shape of humans. He was for such prodigious bulk, he outtopped all the mountains. His head often brushed the stars. This was written about in around 150 BC. One of his hands reached out to the west, to the other to the east, and from them projected 100 dragons' heads, which were all supposed to have been cut off with Zeus's thunderbolts. From the thighs downward, he had huge coils of vipers. So it was just his thighs were human. That's the only part. The rest was huge coils of vipers. When drawn out, reached to his very head, emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged, unkempt, streamed in the wind from his head and cheeks. Fire flashed from his eyes. Such and so great was Typhon when hurling kindled rocks. He went after the heavens. He made for the very heavens to kill the gods, with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight, and being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. All right, and Zeus pelted Typhon and cut his throat and all that stuff. Now, as I showed you before, this is Typhon in the desert. Here he is. And if you come up and look at it, it's very, very hard to miss. And here he is spitting his fire at a fish who apparently was a giant. Here it is right here, spitting his fire at the fish who was a god, and converted this god into a fish, and he attacked that fish because he wanted to kill all the gods. He was Earth's avenger. She gave birth to him to get rid of these gods who destroyed and killed and ate her children. They literally ate her children. And this is all written in Apollodorus. It's just what it is. Now, again, we're going to get so deep into this, and we need all new books. We need everything to change, because everything has to change. But anyway, that's it for today. We're going to get into Velikovsky's work and what he was able to accumulate and make sense of. But he didn't have the evidence. Now I have the evidence to support the things that he was saying. Before, he was just considered insane, especially about the thing with Venus giving birth. All right? But that, to me, I'm telling you right now, That is a vagina, and it did give birth, and I could very well give birth again very, very shortly. This was 3-4 years ago. It's not long ago, and I don't know how long their birth cycle is, but it's this looks to me like that's right at the point where they're about to give birth, and this is 4 years ago. So nobody can tell me that Jupiter can't give birth again. Who can say that? Not me. I'm going to leave it at this today, but we are going to revisit Immanuel Velikovsky. All his understanding of this cascade of events from this huge cataclysm, which was worlds in collision. Then he did Earth in upheaval, ages in chaos, all kinds of information about what happened. The sea people, nobody can explain them. Nobody has any idea about the sea people. They just showed up one day. Nobody said, they have no idea where they came from. Those were the leftovers from the Great Flood. They must have been a huge seafaring culture and met somewhere and got all collected together and then just came in and took over everything. That's the sea people. We're going to look at that too, because he has a book on that. He like Ages in Chaos was after there was the disaster. What happened after then? It's basically what's going to happen after, they bomb all these cities and it's just a nightmare and disaster. What happens after that? It's going to be chaos, absolute chaos. And this is what happened after Earth was almost hit by Venus. It was absolute chaos. And he documented as much as he could from the pretty much oral cultural stories, because there was so much chaos. There wasn't a whole lot of people sitting around writing books. So this is the last bit for today, but we will get back into this deeply. And I'm just going to continue on until the school actually becomes a school, and we have all new books, and we have all new teaching, and then we have a new way of learning. All right, let's go with that. A new way of learning. Teaching is not, you sit down and I tell you what to say. No, that's not his teaching. It might be if you're in like programming, or you're learning something that has like a really hard surface to it. But what we're talking about, geology and history and religion and the ancient texts and all that, there's no hard surfaces here. This is all up for discussion. So let's get the discussion going. I love you all, and it should be a very, very interesting ride, my friends, because things do have to change. And to just let them change on their own it's just not going to happen. If we don't get pushy, just like Velikovsky did, but he got pushed back so hard, he was crushed. And I have been too. I know I have a bunch of people for subscribers, but I get very few hits on my stuff, and I'm still discounted everywhere, and I'm blocked out virtually everywhere. So, every time I post something anywhere, they ban me, because they just don't want us to see this. And everybody else has the same thing too. I hear it from everybody. Yeah, I put your name out there and they block me. Well, what can I say? Until people start to look and pay attention to what's right in front of their faces. I don't just make statements that are unsupported. Virtually never. If I say something like that, just like this, I say there's giants. Well, there is damn sure giants. That's the hair follicle. I show this all the time because it's very, very simple, easy to show. And here's a hair follicle. This is from a giant creature. I don't know what kind, but there's nothing alive that has a hair follicle this size. Nowhere's near. Now, that is the erector pili muscle. Attaches right there. This is the sebaceous gland. Right here. That's the oils the shaft. And there's a shaft running up here, and there's the blood vessels, the vein and the artery at the bottom. It's all been converted into stone from the Mudfossil process, and it's eroded out from whatever creature it was in. All the skin and all that stuff boiled away. But that is a hair follicle. Now, these are giants, and that isn't even big. That's not even big. I know it sounds insane, but it is just true. All right? Still love you all. All right? So stay tuned and start talking. Speak up. Share. And we need to change this, especially if you have kids and they're going to school and they're spending a ton of money to learn what they have to learn to get a grade to get out of that school and be considered smart. They're just wasting their money. Absolutely unbelievable that the academic society will not pay attention to this validated information. My stuff has got DNA and CAT scans, and all of that stuff is done. There is just no questions about the reality of mud fossils. And again, Yale, I don't know if I showed you before, but they agree. Exceptionally preserved soft tissue creatures. These were before fossils. This was before they were the precursors to fossils, and it only happened because of the silica-rich oceans, which I discussed the other day from the new research that it shows that way down deep in the core of the Earth, there's extremely dense silica, and it's about a mile thick or something. It's not real thick, because it's wrapping the whole center core. And if we impacted and that all got disturbed into the waters of the Earth and brought up to the top, which it would, because the Earth literally stood still, but that doesn't mean the water stands still. The water is keeping going like this. So it would come to the surface, and that's what created all the silicon that creates all of these silicon body parts, literally made out of silicon, because it's just been completely invaded, and wherever there's cavities and all the stuff washes out of it, it fills in with silicon dioxide, SiO2, quartz. Everything's been discussed and figured out now, so it's just time to disseminate this information and have the discussions to validate or dismiss what I am presenting. All right, once again, I still love you all. All right, let's get this done.